good evening. Oseh Shalom, please join me. Oseh Shalom, Bimrama, Uya Oseh Shalom, Amen, Kol Yisrael. May the one who makes peace in the heavens bless us and Israel with peace. We gather tonight steadfast in our commitment to the people of Israel and that land we love. Outraged by Hamas's aggression, mournful of every innocent drop of blood shed. I'm Joshua Davidson, Senior Rabbi of Temple Emmanuel. And on behalf of Dr. Gadi Levy, the new director of Temple Emmanuel's Skirball Center for Jewish Life and Learning, I want to welcome you to this important briefing on the situation unfolding in Israel and Gaza. We will hear soon from Shlomi Kaufman, Israel's Deputy Consul General in New York. As his posting here soon comes to a close, this is an opportunity to thank him for his leadership over these years. Tonight's briefing is, of course, a joint partnership with American Friends of Magen Adom. We will hear too from Yoni Yagodovsky, MBA's Director of International Relations, about challenges on the ground. And our moderator will be the great writer and human leader, Meredith Burke. We, the Jewish community, are family. And when family is hurting, we want to be together. And so I want to thank all of you for joining us tonight, including our partnering synagogues, congregations Havolim, Ohev Tzedek, Wurzarua, Shari Tzedek, Sutton Place Synagogue, and Temple of Israel. Now it is my privilege to introduce the National Chairman of American Friends of Magen David Adom, whom we are proud to call our member. Mark LeBeau is the founding and managing partner of the New York Law Office of LeBeau and Sokolow. A graduate first at Yale and then at Harvard, he has served as chair of the New York City Civil Service Commission and of the Manhattan Community Board 5. He currently serves as chair of St. Francis Friends of the Poor, a secretary of the Fortune Society, which helps formerly incarcerated men and women re-enter society, and of course he serves as chair of AFMDA. As a member of Emmanuel, Mark knows of this congregation's philanthropic work, and in his honor, in solidarity with Am, Eretz, and Medinat Israel, the land, the people, and the state of Israel, in gratitude for the extraordinary efforts of MDA, and most importantly, as an encouragement to all of us to support this life-saving organization. Mark, as I invite you to the podium, I want to present to you with this contribution from this your shul for $10,000.
Wow, that's a surprise. Thank you, Rabbi. Congratulations on your appointment as senior rabbi here. You have changed the whole atmosphere of Congregation Emmanuel. You have made it into a family with a purpose and with a lot of warmth. You are the perfect person for the job, and I would have said that even if you didn't give me this check. You all know what Magen David Adom, Red Star of David is, but of course I'm going to tell you anyway, or remind you, put it that way. MDA is Israel's official Red Cross equivalent society. For many years, the motto, as we call it, was blacklisted from the International Federation by the boycott of certain other Middle Eastern countries. But we persuaded at American Friends, the American Red Cross, not to pay dues for a long time until they ran out of money. And a few other countries joined us, and they finally took us in as an official member, that is Magen David Adom in Israel, as an official Red Cross or equivalent society. So the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies now has 3 permissible logos: the Red Cross, of course, the Red Crescent, and the Red Star of David. The only one using the Red Star of David, of course, is Israel. Magen Adom does 4 things in Israel. One, it's a disaster relief society, so that today, when the bombs and the rockets are falling, you can stay and treat the casualties and take care of anybody who's injured. And the idea, if there are natural disasters like forest fires and Golan Heights, they respond to those as well as to automobile accidents and things like that. Secondly, Magen Adom is Israel's national ambulance society. You dial the equivalent of 911 in Israel, you get an MDA ambulance. And there are 1,000 of them throughout Israel now. And Congregation of Bengal has sponsored 2 of those, as well as supplying much needed medical equipment and blood bank material. As a matter of fact, once Bengal started this, Rabbi Davidson, 10 other synagogues in New York, or Jewish houses of worship, have followed suit and have done the same thing. So once again, Temple Emmanuel led the way there. And we're very grateful to you, all of you. Some of you are here from each one of those congregations, and we thank you very much. The third thing that Magen Adom does is it's Israel's national blood bank. 97% of the blood that is used in Israel comes from Magen Adom, and we are particularly interested now in a drive to arrange for the construction of a new national blood bank in Israel. The old one in Tel Ashomer Hospital is a little vulnerable now that rockets can get that far, and we need to build an underground safe source of supply. The fourth thing that Magen Adom does is it always responds first to any emergencies around the world. Haiti, typhoons in Japan, as you probably remember, earthquakes in Bulgaria. And this puts a very friendly face of Israel to the rest of the world. Those are the 4 things that Magen Adom does. We are going to have a program in which Yoni Yagodovsky, whose real name is Yonatan Yagodovsky, who used to be the head of the Jerusalem region for Magen Adom, but now he has gone on to a higher, more elevated job in Amada in Israel. Incidentally, the Jerusalem station, the William H. Boomer MBA Jerusalem station, was given by its principal donor, a member of this congregation, Michael R. Boomer, and Yoni talked him into doing it, so thank you very much for doing that, Yoni. It is also my pleasure to introduce to you the Deputy General Counsel from Israel to New York, Shlomi Kaufman. He has the great pleasure of working for Ido Aharomi, the General Counsel of Israel in New York, who is the tallest person in Israel's foreign service. We have done a very careful survey, and he is definitely the tallest. But all the work is really being done by Shlomi. So without further ado, I present to you the Deputy General Counsel of Israel to New York, Shlomi Kaufman.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, Rabbi, dear friends. First of all, thank you for the opportunity, for the invitation, for this opportunity to speak at the synagogue, this distinguished synagogue, which is one of the centers of the New York Jewish community. Before trying to really portray what's happening from our perspective, I want to thank with we'll start with talking about the MDA, as we say, MADA. And I met Yoni a few minutes ago, and we looked at each other, and it's so Israel, we looked at each other and we said, well, you look familiar, and he said, yeah, it looked familiar to me too. And we started to try and recall, and there's a certain gap between us in the age, so it's probably not in the military or kindergarten, but Yoni told me that he remembers me from the tsunami. And when I was serving in Bangkok, I was number 2 there, and the tsunami happened. And we started, of course, operating on the ground with special operation room and with a lot of assistance from Israel. And Yoni was among those who were sitting before ministry, advising, telling us what and how to do, responsible for the doctor's delegation, for delegations that send aid. And I'm telling you all this not only just to tell you my own and Yoni's history, but to tell you the nature of Israelis and the readiness to stand up and help whenever it's necessary. And the organization that Yoni works for represents the beauty of Israel and Jewishness. I want to thank you all, Yoni, thank you and your organization for what you guys are doing day in and day out. They are outside of Israel, and especially in these days in Israel. And you guys are evacuating every wounded civilian, women, children, every soldier, from the helicopters, from the kibbutzim, from the cities. I want to thank you for what you do. Now, usually when, for those who recall the days of the attacks in Damascus back in 96 and 95, 96, usually the first pictures that we saw were pictures of MDA folks who were on the ground to assist them. The rockets that have been following Israel for the past months are targeting everybody. They're targeting our women, they're targeting our children, they're targeting veterans, they're targeting Jews. They are intended to kill, period. While over 70% of the Israeli population remains in the range of these rockets, it is our most vulnerable who are truly feeling the impact. We're running in terror to get to shelters in less than 15 seconds. Right. Imagine what it means to be a parent in Israel right now, and the fear of not knowing what will happen next, or where the next rocket will come from. Mothers and fathers in Israel are going to incredible lengths to keep our kids safe. From Jerusalem and Tel Aviv to Ashdod and Beersheba, missile alerts are going off around the clock. And normal life has come to halt. Israeli families are spending the nights in bomb shelters. Luckily, at least in the past 10 days, in the past 10, 15 years, they are built inside their apartments. No other country lives like this. Nor will its leadership stand idly by while the citizens are under attack. This is a situation which is totally unacceptable and completely intolerable. Prior to reaching this point, we tried to show enormous restraint and repeatedly appealed for quiet and restoration of the understandings from back in 2012. We never intended to conduct a major military operation, and we offered Hamas plenty of exit ramps, both prior and during the crisis. Yet, while Israel is told to restrain itself, Hamas continues to deliberately put Palestinian civilians in danger as human shields, as Satan uses their death as a propaganda tool. It is not secret that Gaza's largest hospital, Al-Shifa, doubles as a Hamas headquarters. As Prime Minister Netanyahu said the other day, the difference between us, we are using missiles to defend and protect our civilians, and they are using their civilians to protect their missiles. The IDF does everything it can to avoid civilian casualties, and we are all deeply saddened when innocent people are killed and wounded. This is never our intent, but the terrible reality when Hamas decides to abandon its weapons and all the people of Gaza, and when they call for residents not to listen to IDF evacuation warnings. And the world goes to such lengths as the IDF in order to warn people to get out of harm's way. In fact, since the Second World War, no other country has restrained itself like Israel in the past 10 days or 2 weeks, especially in times since launching a ground operation. Israel continues to hold Hamas and the Palestinian leadership in Gaza responsible for the loss of lives of civilians. The decision to escalate this conflict was made by Hamas, perhaps out of weakness or desperation. This current dispute is not about land, and it is clear there is no real Hamas strategy other than to cause collateral damage. Hamas knows that they cannot defeat the IDF, nor they can remove the Jewish state. This organization remains the real tragedy of the Palestinian people in Gaza. It advocates for Islamic rule and is at odds with our way of life and democratic values. They call for destruction of the state of Israel and the death of all Jews. And for all this reason, we demand that the Palestinian Authority immediately dissolve its partnership with Hamas. Meanwhile, our defensive operation against Hamas rockets and their tunnels continued. So far, the IDF has already located 23 of these tunnels, many of which stretch deep into Israel and have been used in thwarted infiltration attacks. However, to date, Israel has lost 27 soldiers in the ongoing operation, including Mike Steinberg and Sean Covelli, who originally hailed from the United States. May their memories be blessed. Let me conclude by saying that our Jewish values remain focused in our eyes, and we will continue to act by this code. Yet still, when it comes to the question of survival, thank God that the Jewish people have the ability to defend ourselves as we could not in previous periods of history. There is no one else in the world who should preach to Israel about morality or humanism. Each one of our soldiers and pilots is educated and taught to be human beings, first of all. And each one of them only takes action as it's needed. We know that the last thing they want to do is cause the death of civilians. Yet they are doing what they have to do to defend their country against the evils of terrorism, to defend their families, their brothers, sisters, and children, and everything we have built in the last 66 years. And we will not apologize for defending ourselves. Despite the double standards Israel is held to and the unfair rhetoric against us, for example, in Geneva and the Human Rights Council, the Israeli people are staying strong, and the spirit is extremely strong. To show the strength of the spirit, I will mention the memory of a guy who was the first casualty in this war. A guy who came to distribute food and goodies to the soldiers. A friend of mine got wounded yesterday, and he was hospitalized. And when I spoke to him this morning, actually last night, I told him it's a hard thing. He said, we're strong, and the spirit is strong, and we're determined to win. But this feeling of strength and determination could not be achieved without the shield and the protection of the Iron Dome. And the Iron Dome could not be achieved without cooperation with this country. And let me express the gratitude of every person in Israel for the cooperation and for the work that has been done here by the Congress, by the administration, by the community, to ensure that Israel is protected against the missiles. Thank you. I want to thank you again for giving me this opportunity. Thank you for your support. Thank you for coming here. And thank you for support for MBA. Thank you.
Thank you, Shlomi. We know that Magen is your favorite charity and Pito's favorite charity, and I'll probably get in trouble for saying that, but it certainly is true. My job now is to introduce our moderator, one of the best and hardest working volunteers for Magen Adom in the world, Meredith Berkman. But I have to say a few things about the person that she's going to have a dialogue with, and that's my friend Jonathan Yagodowski. He is a lifer at Magen Adom. He started as a student, ambulance driver, paramedic, and he has been there ever since and has moved all the way up through the ranks. And you know, a lot of people in the Middle East region say take lives. Yoni says something different. He says it's important to defend Israel, it's important to be strong, it's important to be Israel's second line of defense, which Magen Adom is. But it's also important to say save lives. And that's what he says. He says save lives. Everybody's life. And Magen Adom in Israel saves everybody's life every day. Yes, Palestinians. Yes, Christians. Yes, tourists. Yes, Orthodox. Yes, normal Israelis. But it says save lives. And something tells me if there were more young than Yagodowskis in this world, not only would the Middle East be a better place, but the whole world would be a better place. But that's what he stands for, and that's what he stands for, and that's what we stand for. It's my pleasure now to introduce Meredith Berkman now. You may remember her when she was a columnist for the New York Post. It's that Meredith Berkman. And she has written for all sorts of other magazines. And she is, as I said, one of the most devoted people as a volunteer, as a mom, and as other people are here, to the work of Magen Adom. She's also very active in a group called Moms for Israel, which tries to make mothers and children in Sderot a little bit happier and a little bit better cared for when they are the brunt of so many rockets and so many attacks and are under such traumatic conditions. So I'm going to turn it over to Meredith, who is, I think, here with your father. Is that right? Ladies and gentlemen, Meredith Berkman. You can come up too, young. I'm leaving it to the two of you. Thank you. Welcome. Welcome. Yoni just arrived from Israel today, so his time clock is liable to be a little bit off. Are you okay? Okay.
Thank you. So first of all, like everybody in this room, I don't think there's anybody in this room who doesn't care very, very deeply about Israel. And I doubt that everybody in this room either has a friend in Israel, family in Israel, or they're part of the family in Israel, but they live here. And really, what MPA does and what you do is to care for all of us by saving the lives of Jews and Christians and Muslims in Israel. You're working for a remarkable humanitarian organization. And Halacha to you for all that you've done in your long career at the Adom. I think people would really like to hear first a little bit about the background of MBA. And I think we all really want to understand what the atmosphere is like now in Israel. For your heroic volunteers, for the people who would work with your organization. We spoke earlier and thought that to give people a sense of what Israelis are dealing with in a way on a minute-to-minute basis, you might be able to give us a very visual clue, but an oral clue to what people are experiencing.
Well, first, thank you for coming and being here and showing your support and being a lot of all of us. I'm here representing a fantastic group of people from the entire spectrum of the Israeli society, trained, qualified, and determined to be there for any Israeli or non-Israeli that needs our assistance, whether it's in the blood services, in training, in ambulance response, etc. And this is what we do. This is what we are trained to do, and this is what we chose to do. Nobody forced us to do it. Nobody forced me to do it when I was 16. As a youth volunteer when I was 16, 11 years ago, and so on. Now, Magen has a long history. We just marked a month ago, very humbly, 84 years of official existence of organization, founded in 1913 under the British mandate. The future becoming state of Israel is one of the Israeli organizations that were built and formed at that time. And since the charter was officially signed in Tel Aviv in 1930, so when the state was born, again, the Adom was there. We had already 17 branches across the country, dealing already with ambulance services, training, first aid, blood banking, and so on. And we were the medical corps of the becoming state. When Israel received its independence, and after the War of Independence, the Knesset legislated the Magen law of 1950. And so we are a statutory organization, non-governmental, voluntary, national organization. We are the Israeli, you call it the EMS system of the state of Israel. We run the national blood services of the state of Israel. We are the biggest non-governmental voluntary organization. We have 13,000 volunteers, 1,850 employees. The volunteers are active members on a daily basis in the stations. We have paramedics and EMTs and phlebotomists and trainers from all over the country. Without our volunteers, we will be able to conduct the basic daily work that we do in peacetime, say, in times of emergency. And they're dedicated, determined people that are willing to leave their homes and assist others in what we did over the last weekend. And I spent some time in Ashkelon and in Ashdod and Kiryat Gat and Sderot over the weekend. And people came from Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Petah Tikva, and so on, to this station to give some time off to the local workers and volunteers of these stations, that they will be able to spend a few hours of their Shabbat with their family, and by providing backup to them and continue the service in these communities without jeopardizing their time with their families. That's pretty much the essence of the organization. We are there to be there for every Israeli person, anywhere from Metula to Eilat, with the biggest professional abilities that we can provide.
Maybe you could, for a moment, you told me a story earlier today about the first time you yourself went on the scene to an emergency. And it would be really interesting to know what is it that drives people to this kind of work. You know, what drives you and what drives others. I mean, I have been in State Road during difficult times, and I have been in the MBA center there, and I look into the eyes of some of the people who work there, and the strength, the heroism, the pain of what they've been experiencing in the South for years, certainly much worse at the moment, but it's been going on for years. And I always sort of wonder what is it that drives people to do that kind of work.
Well, I don't want to kind of kill the myth, but my reason to join Magen was this action and fun. There was nothing better for me to drive in an ambulance in Jaffa Street. Now you cannot because the train is there. With a siren on, my head sticking out the ambulance window, making sure that everybody will see me. I think it's volunteer, but I think it came to me very quickly after the first resuscitation, there are other values to it. But my first real encounter with station death and so on, I was trained in the summer of 75 in Jerusalem. I passed a 10-day course in Magen, which still is being done since and before. And it was about 300 Israeli youth every year to become basic first aid ministers and I think 2 or 3 weeks later I was on a bus with somebody that you know. And I was on my way with him on a bus and at the city center in Jerusalem, traffic stopped. Soon after we heard the ambulance sirens and so on, so I said, something is happening, there's action. So I asked the bus driver to open the doors, and let me go out. He said no. I said, I'm from Adom, 16. Open the door, and the entire bus is shouting at him, open the door, it's from Adom. We didn't want to because we were not at the bus stop. A peculiar Israeli bus driver. I mean, we never had it. Eventually, it was an explosion of a booby-trapped refrigerator that was placed in Lion Square. The summer was 75, and I was exposed for the first time in my life to the devastation of an explosion. And I was assisting and managing and taking patients to Shaarei Tzedek that was just very close, less than a kilometer, the whole hospital. I did it twice, and that was my inauguration ceremony in Adom, and then since then I've been stopped.
What are the volunteers right now experiencing? We also talked a little bit earlier about the escalation of preparedness. I mean, in the South, certainly, this has been a problem for quite some time. At what point did MDA realize that they would have to be mobilizing many more ambulances, many more volunteers? I mean, how did MDA prepare itself?
Well, we have a lot of experience. We know and we can expect sometimes the near future. And as you remember, 3 teenagers were kidnapped and murdered a month and a half ago, even less, a month ago. And then a Palestinian teenager was also kidnapped and murdered, and that torched a lot of, let's say, uprising. There were riots in Jerusalem, North Jerusalem, in Arabic communities in the north, and so on. We had to respond. We had to be there for the people. And we realized that things are escalating. So the Director General said, okay, Jerusalem region, that region will uplift the level of work and check also with the police because we are constantly working with the Israeli Police Department. And we understood that there's a potential of escalation. A few rockets were fired from Gaza, so we uplifted the preparedness in the south of Israel, around the Gaza Strip, the western Magen, and so on, this community, knowing that something will happen. Now we can do it because we have the volunteers. And they're on call. I mean, it's very easy for us to ask another bunch of volunteers to take ambulances on. Don't be in stations, take them to their homes, drive them in the morning to your office, to your work, to your workshop, and be on call. This is something that we do on a general basis, and this is what we did a few days before the military operation started. So we were ready, we knew what to expect, and that's the way we performed, and we are still performing. The entire fleet of close to 1,000 ambulances throughout the country are manned 24 hours a day, each day, responding to emergencies, moving around, and so on, providing the regular medical care that we do in routine, and in addition, responding to these type of emergencies that are the outcome of this escalation.
So, what is happening now? I mean, I know that many of you may also have that rocket app on your phone. So my phone is constantly buzzing in the middle of the night, much to my husband's chagrin. I have to turn it off at night or it'll kill me. And I'll know that a rocket is falling and see where it's falling. So, and sometimes there are 4 and 5 in a row. What happens? Are you sending out ambulances every time there's a rocket? How do the volunteers know when they have to get in the ambulance and go? What if they're in a shelter? What if they have young children? As I know, thinking if I were a volunteer, do you leave your children to run? How does it work right now with this terrible crisis?
You know, I'll ask Marcy to give you the sound of the siren that we hear in Israel all the time. Even in my home shoulder, I hear it time. This is the anti-air siren, we call it color red, that we hear according to the very advanced technologies being used to even pinpoint not only the launching of the missile and what is the end point. So it's not all the country that receive the siren data, but also only designated areas. Now the guidelines are, and these guidelines state that many Israelis during the last 2 weeks. So the guidelines of the Home Command: get to your bunker and stay there for 10 minutes. At least if you hear another siren, add 10 minutes to the next siren and stay indoors, even if you hear an explosion and so on. And people that didn't stay, their life was saved. Even if there was directly to them, because they were inside the bunker. The same goes with the Magen, that the stations are part of the community. You have stations in Sderot, in Netivot, in Ashkelon, in Ashdod, in Kiryat Gat, in Tel. So the teams run to shelter. They stay in the shelter. But then there's an explosion. We do not wait for somebody to dial 101 and tell us this place was hit without casualties. We automatically send 1 or 2 teams to scan the area. We get the reports from the Home Command, we know where the location is, and then our people are going out with missiles are sticking people on, wearing helmets and protective gear, getting into the ambulances, going out in order to be there within minutes and to make sure that the casualties, if there are, will be treated immediately. If there aren't any casualties, to calm everybody down. But imagine a mother or a father at home with an ambulance walking outside, and they have young children, and everybody runs to the shelter, and then all of a sudden, after an explosion that is being heard and felt, one of the parents go out and disappear, instead of staying for 10 minutes inside the shelter. Imagine the stress of the children, that they know that one of their parents is no longer protecting them. They're going outside to the open air to save somebody else. It's a very, very stressful situation. And we deal with it every day. We know how to deal with it, and we have the experience how to deal with it, and our people know exactly what is being expected from them. And one of the biggest protectors or shields is the fact that they know what to do. In terms of times of stress, if you know what to do, there's no stress. The problem is for the children.
How do you do? How do they deal with that?
We offer them ventilation. We offer them to take the children and one member of the family to somewhere else, a safer place, to a recreation area, to a hotel at the Dead Sea area, and so on. We have a constant follow-up with the families of our teams with our professionals that are trained to deal with stress. And it's also a lot of professionals that are providing let's say, guidance and so on within the community as part of the service that the public and the Ministry of Health is providing. So by that, we pretty much cover all the potential problems.
Are you having instances of post-traumatic stress syndrome among your volunteers at this point? Is there something different about this conflict, which is such a short time, but so intense? You've been involved since 1975, so you've been involved through a lot of conflicts. Is there something different? I think for a lot of us, this does feel different. Maybe it's because of the intensity, maybe it's because we're dealing with a terrorist organization, and not, that there's something that feels different. People can't sleep at night here, certainly in Israel, because we're worried. And it doesn't feel that there's an end in sight. But does this feel different to you in your capacity at NBA, to you as an Israeli?
There is a different feeling. There is. And I'm a veteran of the first Intifada and the second Intifada. We had many, many people from the general public that suffered from stress disorders due to the bombing. Some of them, even just from watching the television, received stress problems. They were not even in the area of that. I think now that the Israeli society is more prepared, it's more ready. And I can see it in Tel Aviv where my office is, and I can see it in Jerusalem where I live, and I see it in many other places. The response of the people is completely different. There are stress symptoms, and we have people with stress disorder. And for us, a stressful patient is an injured patient. It's somebody that sometimes carries this injury much longer than somebody who has a physical injury. For physical injury, you can treat it. It's treatable, it's known, it's simple, relatively. Depends on the level of injury. Stress takes time. There's a lot of measurements in time until you can heal a stressful person. And we deal with stressful people, I think a little bit less than in past events, but still it's there. And just before we came in, two rockets fell in Rahat. Rahat is a very community, a very city between northern to the Shiva province in the world. And people got hurt, but also people had emotional injuries. And we have stationed in Rahat, and the teams there responded, and part of the people that they treated were their own family members. Because in Bedouin tribes, that should be family. They had to deal with the stress of their own family members. And take them to the hospital, and take them to the clinics inside the community, in order to lower the pressure, to give them the first aid, the emotional first aid treatment, in addition to the physical first aid treatment. And this is what we do. That's the way that the entire medical society in Israel that we are part of is dealing with.
Are you, again, Magen Adom is a humanitarian organization that treats all Israelis of all faiths. Are you treating refugees from Gaza who are running from the conflict?
Well, Magen is not working inside Gaza, even in peacetime, but also inside the Palestinian Authority in Judea and Samaria. There's the Palestinian Red Crescent over there, but we have good relationships first with the Palestinian Red Crescent in Judea and Samaria. It's been going on for more than 30 years. And also, we are providing humanitarian support to people in Gaza. In the northeast corner of the Gaza Strip is a terminal that was built by Israel, the Adom checkpoint. And almost every day in peacetime, we receive critically ill patients, babies that were preborn, and so on. And our teams are taking them to Israeli hospitals after everything being settled, coordinated between security and medical wise and so on. I know there were several Palestinians from Gaza that were injured, and the army brought them, civilians, not journalists, but civilians that were taken and treated by the Israeli medical corps at the scene, brought to the border, and we took them to further treatment in Israel. And it's part of our mission. We cannot look the other way. A patient is a patient. And it happened to me over my career that I've treated people that were acting against us. But then when they were injured, we treated them.
Well, as Mark said, certainly this represents the best of Israeli values and Jewish values, so for all that they're doing. I just want to say, I want to ask a question about treatment of wounded soldiers. But before I do, I just want to say that the Magen Adom staff is going to start collecting the note cards if anyone has questions. So if you have a card and you want to ask a question, people walk around and you can give them your questions. Are you treating soldiers as well, or is the army treating injured soldiers?
Okay, at the areas of the combat, of the conflict, the army, army medics, paramedics, doctors are treating the field soldiers. Those who are airborne by helicopters to hospitals, and more than 9 hospitals now in Israel, we have placed ambulances in the helipads. And there's constant stay of ambulances in the helipads across the country. We are waiting to receive the casualties, and we treat them at the helipad and drive them to the emergency rooms. And there are designated locations along the border between Israel and Gaza. We call them meeting points that the medical corps is bringing the casualties to that point. Usually there we are staying with armored ambulances and with full body protective gear against armor piercing bullets. With paramedics and our doctors and EMTs, receive the patients, receive the casualties, and then drive them under medical treatment to the hospitals. And this is a very tricky situation because we want and we do wait for the care. We don't want them to wait for us. So we wait to see, and taking out a patient casualty from a combat zone, it's not so simple. Sometimes we can wait for an hour until the casualty arrives, and the area we are staying in is not the same. We are out exposed. Sometimes shooting is around us. Sometimes mortar shells are being shot to back areas and so on. So our people are taking calculated risks while waiting to treat patients the same way that we wait or respond to areas where missiles are falling inside the Israeli region.
Honestly, I don't know. It's very hard as an American sitting here to understand, like I said, what exactly is going on. Can you give us a sense? We heard from far away, we heard the siren, we hear what, I'm trying to imagine what it would be like in body armor, leaving my kids in a shelter and running to help someone else's kids. But do you have, is there an anecdote you can think of in the last few weeks, hopefully with a happy ending, that gives you a sense of what it's like for the NPA volunteers, or really just for being in a shelter. My cousin who lives in Israel told me she was in Tel Aviv having dinner at a restaurant when the siren went off. And she said, well, you know, to go next door to the stairwell, and my tea was just the right temperature. And I thought, well, I'll bring my tea. I'm going to be there for a while. She said, she's American born. She said, cultural no-no. I thought people would have wine, they would have tea. So I felt like an idiot. It made me laugh, which is good because there's so much of a funereal atmosphere. What is it really like? You know, when that phone app is going off, it feels so urgent. It's really hard, I think, unless you've been there during that same Adom or red alert, especially when there's so much danger. And yes, the Iron Dome was taking rockets out of the sky, but then, God forbid, the Iron Dome is no more work.
Well, it didn't work till this morning. There was a direct hit in Yehuda, which is not far from Tel Aviv, very close to our National Medical Dispatching Center and our Blood Services Center, and fortunately only a few minor casualties. And this is one of the emphasis that we always say, and the Home Front Command says that to the all Israelis. We are lucky to have the Iron Dome, but it's not completely proof. Missiles can infiltrate in and can hit residential areas and so on. But because, you know, we are pretty much optimistic people, pretty crazy, I guess, and even we enjoy to make jokes out of the current situation, and it's one of our actions. To try to, let's say, enjoy the chaotic situation. So my office is in an office building in front of our headquarters. The headquarters is not big enough, so we are renting the floor nearby, and we have a big bomb shelter and additional offices over there. And each time you see the amount of people running first to the bomb shelter. And then the law office people are running in, and so I ask them, why aren't you so slow? I mean, you know, we are facing the same day. They said, yeah, but sometimes we live out of the outcome. And the question all the time is how you can protect yourself. So some people immediately are picking up the cell phone, calling their kids and saying, and each one has a fuse, so each one has it somewhere else. And this is why there are more cell phones in Israel than in Israel. We have about 12 million cell phones in Israel, and they all work. Because, you know, we like to be in touch. We would like to know what's going on. And everybody calls me to make sure that this person or your elderly parents or your grandparents are safe, you heard the siren, and you're taking the proper measurements. So all of a sudden, there's no reception. That's just a situation in Israel. There's no reception. Imagine, siren is on, rockets are being fired, you hear the explosion of the Iron Dome intercepting the missile, and there's no reception. That's an issue.
Tell me what we as Americans can do. I think a lot of us feel helpless that people came tonight because they want to know what's going on, they want to hear about the work that you're doing. But I also think people want to know how they can contribute, other than the financial sense, but how they can do something, what they can do to feel that they're showing their support.
First, you are here. And that means you are here because you care. You are not here only because of me. And, I know why.
I'm here because of you.
Yeah, but just they are here because of you. But it means the support, the moral support that Israel receives is crucial, especially now. But there are other sounds in other places of the world that are not so pro-Israel. And even though some of the leadership and the politicians in many of the countries, including Europe, are all of a sudden a little bit more supportive, the overall situation is not that. So knowing that there's somebody behind us means a lot. And I'll tell you, I spent more than 25 years in the army, mainly in reserve, and there is a routine in the army when a team of soldiers are walking in the middle of the night, one after the other. Every 10 minutes, the last person behind is putting his hand on the shoulder of the person in front of him. And then the other guy, till the commander is being tapped on the back, knowing that everybody is okay and we are walking safely one after the other in full darkness, in full quiet. This is what we feel from each and every one of you now. We are just next to us, we are with us. And it means a lot. Before I left Israel on Sunday, Monday. Never mind. I spoke to a friend of mine at the Jerusalem station and said, "What? Are you going again?" I said, "Yes." They told me, "Tell them that each time I'm on a call with my ambulance, one of our supporters is with me, the member of this community, with somebody who thinks about it. He's with me in the ambulance where I'm saving life." So this is the importance of this, because Magen is not funded by the government.
Say that again, because I'm not sure people understand that, even though you described it earlier. I'm always shocked by that.
We are a national organization, but we are not governmental. Meaning they're not on the government budget. We charge for our services. About 70% of our income comes from the fee-for-service. And by the way, we have to charge for the services.
I mean that the people who are injured are charged for this.
We provide them the invoice, they go to the medical insurance, to the cooperative, and it's being dealt with, or the car insurance, whatever. And they deal with it, and these people cannot pay for some reason, even though they're covered from the national health law. We continue to provide services to them, and mainly these people are the weakened part of the Israeli society. As you know, people who are not well off have a tendency to be also more sick. So they use our services more often. Some of them are frequent flyers, but we provide a service with them and make sure to reach their medical insurance and get the funds. 5% of annual income comes from the government paying for services that the government is buying, and for a certain allocation for our national development, as it is being done now, working with the RDF, with the Home Command, with the police, with the fire department, with various agencies in Israel, and not on a daily basis, every hour. And this is part of the things that we do in order to prepare the organization. We participate in a lot of exercise throughout the year. And 25% of our budget comes from donations. And the donations, let's say, weight in our budget is way beyond the 25%. Because all of these donations are directly channeled to our life-saving abilities. The ambulances, medical supplies, medical equipment, communication equipment, to the best technologies, the lab-making services, etc. So without this support, we'll be able to provide service, but not according to what is being expected from us in a very important state in Israel, and we are very spoiled because the common Israeli wants us to lead us before we doesn't.
I'm going to read some of the questions from the audience. Are there volunteers from other countries coming to aid Israelis now, perhaps from countries that Magen David Adom has helped in the past?
Well, the answer is yes. We run the program for the last 22 years, and I'm humbly saying that I was one of the people who started this program of overseas volunteers. And today, in Jerusalem, we started a training, 10 days training of 75 volunteers from 12 different countries in the age that are school, they are students, different 12, variety of 12 countries that are receiving training to become emergency technicians, and for the next 2 months will volunteer in our stations. And even now, we have the graduates of the last month program that are volunteering in Israel right now. Only 5 of them decided to go back home. All the others stayed and are staying in Israel. And from the sports that started today, we have only 8 cancellations. Meaning, it's not only the kids who are traumatized with Israel, their parents also. And this gives us another perspective and another dimension on the values that are being implemented in many countries across the world and affiliation to Israel.
That is very encouraging. Another question is, have you interacted with American EMS services?
Oh yes, a lot. We are working quite often with the responding agencies in America. We are participating in seminars here. We are hosting professionals in Israel. We are exchanging knowledge, exchanging experience, learning for others. And Israelis don't learn so quickly from others, but we do. And we do not know everything. Quote me, we do not know everything. I can give, for example, we were training some of the EMS responding agencies in the Boston area, and we saw how they acted at the marathon, the bombing at the marathon, and not only the first responders, but also the hospitals. You sometimes come with experts from Adom and from the emergency arm of the hospitals in Israel, and do joint training, do training in Israel, so, and not only, by the way, in America, but also in other places.
Has the call-up of soldiers trained in the political volunteers? I mean, there have been,
yes.
How many people have been called up? Over 50,000.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that employees, we were called more than 100 to their combat units.
And how many full-time employees and how many full-time employees do you have now?
We have 1,800.
So 100.
100 were posted on. Volunteers many go, because they are all over in various capacities. But we also prepare for that. And the command is the backup unit to Magen as well, with medics, doctors, and so on, that when there is such kind of enlisting, they are being called and assist us. So they try to fill up the gaps, and they do along the year training with us, they do shift with us. Also, we have a unit for the blood services that was also called in of phlebotomists that are also assisting us in increasing the blood inventory.
Someone else asks, are there a lot of casualties among the volunteers?
Not directly. And we know a few of our volunteers that during the army service were hurt. Now, in this escalation, only a few. We are with them in the hospitals and with their families. One of the officers that was killed a few days ago met a group of our volunteers a while ago when they came, and he was from one of the units of Golan, and they assisted and they brought up a few things. They wanted to make them happy when they were in Gaza, and then this unit was called out to the Lebanon area. So when they came to Gaza, they were no longer there, so they drove up I don't know, 350 kilometers to meet with them and connect with this officer. And just a few days ago, we heard that he was killed. So the volunteers are now with his family. And I can tell you that over the years, there's hardly a family in Israel. I don't think there is a family in Israel that was not affected one way or the other, directly or indirectly from this type of care. And I think there's a lot of sorrow in it, but I think it also strengthening the society. And we, and especially me, we have a tendency to see the bright side of things, as most people used to say. And we do think that from that, we can always grow up and project goodness and strength, and this is what I'm very about to do.
And how do you do that? I mean, it's, you know, again, we're here, and I think in some ways it's almost emotionally because we're watching the news and listening to these apps and longing in some ways, or would be here tonight to be there. It's very hard to imagine how you can be positive at this particular moment. And it must be particularly difficult for these MDA volunteers who are seeing things that other people are not seeing.
Well, to be able to get a volunteer, you have to be kind of a special entity. I mean, not every person can do it. Not any person can do other crafts and works and so on. It's something that you choose to do. It has to be solved. So you can bring it and you can continue doing it in that person. But from, you know, it's a very Jewish way of life to moan and to complain, and that's, you know, we kind of live without it. It's like the chicken soup. You have to live with it. But on the other side, only complaining and moaning and so on doesn't do anything. And we are there because we know that people expect us. The people trust us. And in the last public poll that was done in Israel before this escalation, checking the level of, we call it confidence on a variety of public organizations in Israel, including the IDF, we came second after the IDF, nearly 90%. Now that's great. It's fantastic. We were jumping up and down, and then we began to be Jewish and worried and concerned. Because it means that we do not have any margin to play with. People expect us, and they have high expectations, and we have to meet these expectations every minute. And we do it because we have dedicated people that they know what to do, and they chose to do this work, and because it became kind.
So, first of all, Yoni, again, on behalf of everyone in this room, I want to thank you for your devotion to Israel, the people of Israel, through your work on Adom, and for all the lives you've saved and the people that you've helped. It's really astonishing, and we're all deeply appreciative, and we're deeply appreciative of the work that Adom does. And I do want to repeat again that Adom is not funded by the government, and it does rely very strongly on people's donations. But again, I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. And I guess, as you said, we are united, we cannot be divided, and we stand with you and your volunteers and your employees, and I think we all stand with the people of Israel, and we'll pray for peace, and pray that the Adom centers are needed for our babies being born, and not for casualties from rockets falling.
So I agree with you. Thank you very much. Thank you for supporting us and being with us for so long and driving so many people here. Mark, thank you so much. And I can tell you that statistically, every 36 hours, a baby is born in one of our ambulances or by one of our team members.